Hey Ciara, how's it going? I think you did a fantastic job with this. I think you really nailed that overcast lighting and sense of atmosphere, and you have some lovely shapes going on with your rocks. And overall, it's a really successful image. So I just have like a couple of little notes and suggestions. Some of it's a little bit more subjective, and then some of it might help with like the overall design. So like you can pick and choose what you want to maybe consider for your next image or add into this. So the first thing is, when I'm looking at the composition, if we imagine like a line coming straight down the middle of the image, like these rocks here in the foreground, they're just right on that line. So what I would do is I just move them over very slightly. So they're just a little bit more over here, more on this third of the image. So I feel it will just help balance the composition a bit more. And then the other thing is, so I have to catch myself doing this all the time, is watching out for tangents with different objects. So at the minute, if you look at the wave here, it's just joining up a bit with the rock, and it's just creating this sort of line of action this way across the image. So it's just something to watch out for. I do it all the time myself. So with that in mind, when we're looking at the rock, I think we should break that up a little bit here and create more of an overlap. And that, when you're creating overlap, it will give the image a bit more of a sense of depth too. The other thing is, again, I catch myself doing this all the time. When we're painting and drawing, we naturally want to make things even, and it just tends to slip into our drawing. So just with the kind of the length of these two shapes, they're pretty much the same. So it's a very subtle thing that you can start doing, and just watching out for in your work is breaking that up a little bit. So you have more of that 70-30 rule going on, and you've done that really well with the rocks here. So you have your kind of large shape, you have a medium shape, and then you have a really small shape here, and then a small one again. So it's just trying to be a little bit consistent with that. So now, like say with that, and you'd create a bit more of a flow, or maybe this comes up a little bit more. So now you have this longer piece, and then you have a shorter piece. So say 80 or 90-10 kind of ratio. So just something to consider with the image. And then you can start looking out for other parts of the image where you might be doing that. So there might be certain parts of the rock here that you might be able to simplify and maybe stylize a little bit. So if you're looking at kind of nature, and I've gathered a few images here of things to consider, I'll be getting into the waves crashing in a bit. But if you're looking at the way nature's kind of arranged it, like you've this kind of bigger shape, and then you've the smaller shape, and then that's broken into smaller shapes again. So just trying to carry a little bit more of that into your rock structures might help. So I might simplify this area here, and then obviously you'd come in and really finesse that and get the right values, etc. My eye kind of comes to this piece as well a little bit, so you know that could be simplified further. And then kind of in around here. So yeah, just something to watch out for. I think it's nice. It's a bit more of a subjective thing, stylizing the shapes, but when you do it successfully, I think it really enhances an image. Even when you're working with more of a stylized or more of a realistic setting, you can still come in and give that realistic rock a bit of a stylization. And yeah, this one's working really well. The other thing I was considering was, so at the minute, like if we look at your rocks here, there's just a bit of a straight line going across. All the rocks are on the exact same kind of line of space there. So what you could do is you could kind of break this up. So maybe this rock is broken into three. Kind of maybe there's another little arch in kind of this way. And then maybe you've got some waves crashing up here, which would break up that kind of line of action going across. And then same with these pieces over here. Those rocks could be just a little bit closer to us. So that way you're going to break up that overall shape and that line going straight across the image. And then what you could also do with that is start bringing in these waves that are crashing up onto the rock. Now this is more of a suggestion with the image. You could go with just breaking up the rock shapes and bringing them down into the water a little bit more in parts. But it might be nice if there's a little bit of wave crashing up in places just to break up that straight line. So you could be very subtle with that. And same with this one, the little small rock here. Like, waves are always crashing into the rocks. If I just go back, so I'm using this is PureRef, by the way. It's free, you can download it. You can basically just copy and paste images into it, and it's just really, it's a nice little reference tool to use. So you know, you can use some of this as loose inspiration. I think it's nice. So let's see, so a little bit more wave action going on here in these places. Cool. So what's next? Another little note I had, oh yeah, so you could even now this is more of a suggestion, it's you don't have to take this, but might be nice to consider, is having a wave crashing up here in the foreground. So I'm just using this kind of textured brush here, so maybe you're getting a little bit of that going on. Like maybe some of those rocks are going out into the water, and this is going to just create a little bit of atmosphere there. So yeah, maybe just something subtle like that. And then you could also start making a loose suggestion of maybe there's some other rocks in the water here. And since the water's crashing, it's going to create little rock pools. So if I come back to PureRef, I had an image here somewhere. Yeah, so like this kind of thing. These little rock pools are nice, and they're taking on a little bit of a brown colour here. These are more purple. Obviously you can see more of the rock in these ones. So yeah, that could be nice as well. You could bring a little bit of that in. So I'd grab this and increase the value. And then even when you're designing these little rock pools, like even getting into just like the different scales of those, as I showed you before, like the kind of 70-30 rule. You could have a bigger one and then a smaller one. But yeah, painting water, reflective water, is always tricky, so you do need to spend a bit more time on that. So I'll just put in a little suggestion of maybe a couple in here, and then maybe another little small rock on the beach here. And then if we look at, come back into our reference, so now this is more of a blue sky day. But we do get these nice purples and reflections just on the water edge, on the sand. So you could incorporate a little bit more of that in maybe. So I've just grabbed my orange, and this is colorist, by the way, that I'm using, and I've got all my RGB, HSV and LAB sliders turned on. So I'm just dragging this orange a little bit more towards the blue. So maybe we have a little bit more of that going on in the water. And to show off that kind of wetness of the sand, you could have the little shadows or little reflections being cast. But they're very subtle. Yeah, like this kind of thing. And then as well, the water has quite a hard edge in places. So I'm just coming in little spots with the lasso tool. Could be cool. And then you could even grab a little soft brush. Something like that. And obviously do that in the other little areas. And again, you're getting into like designing those shapes of the wave. That can really enhance the image as well. Another thing you maybe do is give a little bit more structure to the waves. So, you know, maybe over in this area we have a little wave crashing, or it's just breaking here. So I'm looking at this image here. So you just have a few of these little waves breaking in places. It might be nice. And then trying to make a nice shape out of those. Another thing I would probably do is just give this wave a little bit more detail. Another thing would be if we check the values. So I use Control Y. I think we could push these rocks back a bit, like a bit more atmosphere. This is quite a heavy value. Like you can see here in my value, it's like 5%, so it's quite heavy. So and by the way, if you want to set that up, you need to come into Proof Setup, Custom, and make sure your device to simulate is on working grade .gain 20%. So you'll find that in this drop down menu, and then when you press Control Y, that's going to give you the most accurate value representation. So I just bring in a soft brush and just start knocking back, and then I'd separate this out as well. Have this rock. This rock's obviously much closer to us, so I make sure I'm not picking up on that. And you can just push back a few of those areas. And maybe where the waves are crashing, there's a little bit more atmosphere because of all the water spraying around. So if we come in back into our values here, if we just turn that layer on and off, you can see how that's really pushing that rock back in space. Another thing to consider would be, so if we kind of zoom out of this image and we're looking at the line of action, you know, we have this now, we're kind of coming up, this is our focal point here, the little house. So how can we draw the viewer's eye to this in a more efficient way? So small things like even the light coming through the clouds, I think you could reverse that the opposite way, because at the minute that is sort of, you know, it's going down here and it's bringing us right out to the edge of the image, and then there's nothing really, now this is subjective, but like something to bring us back in to the piece of art. Whereas what might be easier would be to have this coming in this way. I'm going to actually put that on a new layer and just delete that real quick. So yeah, just a soft brush. I'm going to get a light value. And then maybe we have a couple more here, just kind of attracting our eye to the little hut on the mountain. And then since this is a kind of eye-catching area, we'd want to bring in a bit more detail to this space, like this space here, so you could get in there and design some nice shapes of the clouds. And I might have made a few too many of the little light shafts here, so I might just simplify that a bit. So you could just have a subtle suggestion and maybe the value is a little bit stronger. Now it is an overcast setting, so we don't want to push that too far, but it just might be nice to bring the viewer's eye up to the hut more. And then since that's getting a little bit of light, we could push the value of this to a slightly warmer color. So yeah, just a few little suggestive brush strokes. What else can we do? I think you could add a little bit more value to like this area to separate out this piece and this piece. So I'm going to make a very rough lasso selection here, just to illustrate the point. So yeah, super rough. I'll grab a value from around this area and just push that back. And that really sets off the scale then of that large rock in the back. And even with these rocks over here, they're really far away, so what we can do, I can do an overlay layer and grab a bit of maybe this cloud color and just set them back in space so they lose some of that saturation. Same in here. So you can just see the difference there. Even with this, you could set a little bit more blue atmosphere into it. So if we go back into our values here and just compare, if I have the right layer, there we go. So if you just compare before and after, we can just see how that separates out those a bit more. Now this is more of a suggestion, but maybe this rock is getting lost in the atmosphere a little bit. So I'll just grab the cloud brush. So yeah, maybe something like that, setting that back. this area here is grabbing my eye very slightly, this area. So in a way it's kind of competing for attention. So it's just because this value is very high. So you could either like knock that back a little bit, or you could just change your rock shape so that it's not coming up as high. So they're really the main points. They're just very subtle changes. It's like that final 5% of the image that you can just enhance a little bit. But yeah, overall fantastic job. I think you really nailed it, and I look forward to seeing what you do with the rest of the tutorial. And then sometimes I also use these filters under color lookup. So there's one here, the tree strip look. Now at 100% it's way too strong, so I sometimes knock that down to maybe like 15%. It just changes the values and the colors of the image very slightly. It's a very subtle change. So if I just put all these layers into one group and compare before and after. So it's really a big emphasis on atmosphere and just maybe a little bit more thought into the design of the shapes, considering the atmosphere of how far away things are, and just watching out for those straight lines and the evenness of the shapes. So yeah, very subtle things that can just enhance the image. So I hope you found that helpful, and good luck with the rest of the tutorial.